Emily had always known she wanted to be a mother. From a young age, she imagined a life filled with laughter and play with her children. She graduated from medical school with a dream of helping children and found her true passion in pediatrics. But life had other plans for her. During her teenage years, Emily suffered an experience that would change her life forever: a benign tumor in her uterus. Surgery was necessary, and although it saved her life, she was forced to make a difficult decision: to have her uterus removed. This decision, although vital to her health, meant that Emily would never be able to have biological children. She and her husband, Jack, went through moments of grief and acceptance. However, hope still lived in their hearts. Emily knew that motherhood could come in other ways, such as through adoption. But life's challenges didn't stop there. Over time, Emily and Jack tried to adopt several times, but the process was slow and full of obstacles. Every time they thought they were closer to realizing their dream, something would bring them back to square one. But they didn't give up. Together, they kept trying, with faith that one day they would be able to form the family they had always dreamed of. Time passed, and despite the difficulties, their love for each other and the hope of becoming parents kept them strong. Until finally, the great news arrived. They had been approved to adopt a boy. That moment felt like a miracle, an opportunity to make their dreams come true. The day Emily and Jack received the news of their approval was one of the happiest of their lives. They could hardly believe that after so many years of waiting, they would finally have the chance to be parents. They had been accepted to adopt Noah, a boy who was only 3 years old. Although the adoption process had been long and tiring, that moment seemed to make all the effort worthwhile. Emily's heart was pounding as she and Jack prepared to meet little Noah. He lived in an orphanage, and the time to pick him up was approaching. They were both excited, but also a little nervous. They had dreamed so much about this day that it seemed unreal to see it finally come true. The night before, Emily and Jack had been on the couch, talking about what to expect. They had already bought Noah clothes and toys, and the room they had prepared for him was decorated with great care. "Will he like us?" Emily asked, a hint of anxiety in her voice. Jack smiled and took her hand. "We'll love him like he deserves, Emily. It's going to be wonderful." The big day arrived, and Emily was filled with anticipation. They drove to the orphanage, their minds filled with expectations and dreams for the future. When they arrived, they were greeted by the director, a kind woman who led them to the room where Noah was waiting for them. Emily felt her heart race even more when she entered the room and saw the little boy for the first time. Noah, with his big brown eyes and shy smile, looked at Emily and Jack curiously. Emily could hardly believe it. He looked like a younger version of Jack, with the same bright eyes and the same energy. Without hesitation, Emily went over and hugged him, feeling that the instant connection was real. When Emily held Noah for the first time, something magical happened. The feeling of having him in her arms was indescribable. He, with his dark hair and curious expression, looked directly at her as if he already knew her. His eyes shone with a mixture of insecurity and hope, something that touched Emily's heart deeply. Jack was next to her, watching the scene with indescribable emotion. He never imagined that he would feel so connected to a child so quickly. Noah, even though he was so small, had something special, something that reminded Jack of his own childhood. They didn't need words to understand what was happening. The connection was immediate. Emily, with her eyes filled with emotion, looked at Jack and whispered, "He's perfect, Jack. He's our son." Jack smiled, trying to hold back the tears, and with a trembling voice, answered, "Yes, he's ours." The director, who watched everything with a soft smile, explained the transition process so that Noah could get used to his new family. Although the boy had lived in foster care for most of his life, he seemed curious and open to change. The first night in his new home would be a big change for him, but also for Emily and Jack. As they drove away from the foster home, with Noah in Emily's arms, they both felt as if they were starting a new chapter in their lives. The car was quiet, but the air was filled with indescribable joy. The anticipation of what was to come was palpable. When they got home, Emily and Jack lovingly prepared Noah's room. It was a room full of toys and vibrant colors, a space where Noah could finally starting to feel safe and loved. The first few days with Noah at home were a mix of happiness and adjustment. He seemed to enjoy his new surroundings, but he also felt a little insecure. The house, which had previously seemed quiet, was now filled with laughter and play. Every new gesture from Noah, whether it was a shy smile or a loud laugh, made Emily and Jack's hearts swell with love. Noah loved exploring the house. His favorite toy soon became a teddy bear that Emily had bought for him, and he would take it to bed every night. Jack, although exhausted after work, made an effort to spend as much time with his son as possible, playing ball in the garden or reading bedtime stories. It was a new life, a life they had always dreamed of, and they were willing to make the most of it. But even with all the joy Noah brought, Emily felt a growing pressure. Her job at the hospital, caring for children, made her miss home. She was happy with her son, but she also felt that she was losing connection with him by being so busy. "I should spend more time with him," Emily thought as she examined yet another child at the hospital. Jack, on the other hand, was trying to balance both worlds, although it was clear that his love for Noah was growing. However, he knew that Emily was overwhelmed. Sometimes he would see her with tired eyes, but also with a smile on her lips, knowing that being a mother was an experience she had longed for, but at the same time, a role full of challenges. At night, Emily and Jack would lie together, staring at Noah's crib, waiting for him to fall asleep. Silently, they shared the feeling that life finally seemed to have meaning. The days passed quickly, and Emily and Jack's routine began to settle in. Noah, now fully integrated into the family, became more and more the reason for their daily smiles. The house was full of scattered toys, laughter, and conversations about the future. But, as in any phase of adjustment, the reality of balancing work life and parenthood began to set in. Emily, though deeply grateful to have Noah in her life, began to feel the weight of both her job and motherhood. As a pediatrician, her job was demanding. She spent long hours at the hospital caring for children who needed her, but it also meant missing out on precious time with her son. Often, when she came home after a long day at work, Noah would already be asleep, and she felt a pang of pain that she hadn't spent the day with him. Jack, on the other hand, was always there when she wasn't. He took Noah to the playground, put away his toys, and read him bedtime stories. But even he, who was deeply involved, knew that the situation was becoming a challenge for both of them. Emily, with her heart torn, began to feel like she couldn't be the mother she had always imagined. and this left her frustrated. One such night, after a long shift at the hospital, Emily sat next to Jack on the couch, exhausted but with a worried look in her eyes. "I'm missing out on time with Noah, Jack. I wish I could be home more, but the hospital never stops. I feel like I'm failing as a mother." Jack held her hand tenderly and replied, "You're not failing, Emily. I know it's hard, but Noah loves you anyway, and you're amazing at what you do too. We're doing our best." Jack's words comforted her, but the guilt still lingered. She knew she needed to find a way to balance her two passions, work and motherhood. One night, after a particularly tiring day at the hospital, Emily came home later than usual. The clock was almost midnight, and she was exhausted. She had been waiting to go in, take a shower, and rest, looking forward to seeing Noah, to feeling the warmth of home and the peace of being with him. But when she walked in, something felt wrong. The house was eerily quiet. Emily called out for Noah and Jack, but there was no answer. The silence was disconcerting. Her heart began to beat faster, and a sense of unease spread through her body. She put her bag down and walked through the house, searching, calling for her two loves. But there was no sign of Jack or Noah. She entered Noah's room, but the crib was empty. His toys were scattered across the floor, as if Noah had just finished playing. Emily felt a wave of panic and fear. Where were they? This didn't make sense. Jack was always home when she got home, and Noah would never be alone. Suddenly, Emily heard the front door open. Jack came in, shopping bags in hand, but he wasn't alone. Noah wasn't with him. Jack's expression was one of surprise when he saw the distress on Emily's face. "Where's Noah?" "Jack." Emily's voice was shaking with fear. Jack looked confused. "He was sleeping when I went out to get milk," he said, sounding unconcerned until he saw the terror in Emily's eyes. "What happened, Emily?" Fear growing, Emily and Jack ran to Noah's room. But when they arrived, they found the crib empty. Emily felt as if the ground had dropped out from under her feet. The house that had once been full of laughter and love now felt cold and empty. Panic gripped Emily as she dialed the police, her hands shaking. "My son is missing," she screamed, and soon the siren of a police car cut through the silent night. Terror settled in Emily's heart. Where was Noah? What had happened? The police arrived quickly at Emily and Jack's house, their blue and red lights illuminating the quiet street. Neighbors began to gather outside, drawn by the sound of the sirens, murmuring to each other, curious and worried. Emily stood frozen, unable to comprehend what was happening. How could Noah have disappeared so suddenly? They had taken every precaution, always vigilant, always there for him. The officers began to search the house, checking doors and windows, but there were no signs of forced entry or struggle. It was as if Noah had simply vanished into thin air. What was even more frightening was the feeling that something was not right, but no one knew what. Beatrice, the officer in charge of the investigation, asked rapid-fire questions as she scanned the surroundings. "Has anyone seen or heard anything strange? When was the last time you saw him?" she asked. Jack and Emily looked at each other, still in shock. "He was here, at home, when we went shopping. There was nothing wrong. He was in his room, sleeping, or so it seemed," Jack said, his voice wavering. As Beatrice spoke to the police, Emily walked away, feeling the weight of the situation growing heavier on her. How could Noah just disappear like that? She tried in vain to rationalize everything that had happened, but fear consumed her. She couldn't believe that her son was really lost. The next few hours were a blur of emotions. The search around the city intensified. Posters with Noah's photo were distributed. The police began questioning neighbors, friends, and anyone else who might have seen something. But despite all their efforts, no real leads turned up. Emily and Jack tried to hold on to hope, but the emptiness that filled their hearts was indescribable. Each day, without news of Noah, felt like an endless nightmare. Each blank stare and each unanswered corner only increased the despair. But despite the pain, hope was not completely gone yet. They needed answers. They needed Noah back. Months had passed since Noah's disappearance, and the pain in Emily and Jack's home was unbearable. Each day seemed to drag on, with the empty hours filled only by the absence of their son. Police efforts had slowed, but the couple continued to live in the hope that one day he would return home. Emily spent her days at the hospital, trying to maintain a routine while her heart remained at home, empty and anxious. One afternoon, during a particularly busy shift at the hospital, Emily received an unexpected call. A child had been brought into the emergency room, the victim of an accident. When she walked into the room, what she saw stopped her in her tracks. The boy, about 3 years old, had the same brown eyes and dark hair as Noah. Her heart raced, and a rush of emotion made her falter. The room was full of movement, doctors and nurses trying to care for the boy, but Emily couldn't take her eyes off him. Something inside her told her that this boy was Noah. She walked closer, trying to remain calm, and when she looked at the boy's face, the connection was instantaneous. His eyes, his shy smile, everything about him felt like the son she had lost. "He's Noah," Emily whispered to herself as a doctor approached. "This is Liam," the doctor explained, looking at her with concern. "He was in an accident, and we're doing everything we can to stabilize him." Emily didn't know what to do. Panic mixed with hope. Was it Noah? Or was it just a coincidence? She needed answers, but before she could ask, Liam slowly woke up from his sedation. His eyes, still weak, fixed on Emily. When he spoke, his husky but clear voice left her speechless. "Are you Mommy?" he asked, with a shyness that seemed so familiar. Emily's heart clenched at the words, and tears began to fall from her eyes. She didn't know what was happening, but the bond she felt with this little boy was undeniable. Liam, or Noah, was there in front of her, and the reality of that the moment felt surreal. What had happened to him? How had he gotten there? And most importantly, who had taken him? With Liam under observation at the hospital, Emily couldn't stop wondering how this was possible. Her son, whom she had lost so abruptly, was now right there in front of her. But something was off. The boy was in a precarious situation, with injuries he shouldn't have. How could he have disappeared for months and turned up now, in such a vulnerable state? Emily talked to the doctors to make sure Liam was treated in the best possible way, but her mind couldn't stop wondering. She knew that, even though he had a different name, Liam's features and behavior were identical to Noah's. He had the same curious eyes, the same mischievous expression that Emily had seen so many times in her son. When he was a little more stable, Emily approached him with a heart heavy with unanswered questions. "Liam, honey, what happened to you? How did you end up here?" she asked softly, but with apprehension in her voice. The boy looked at her with a confused expression, and for a moment, it seemed like he didn't remember anything. Then he said, with a weak sigh, I was with a lady named Sarah. She took me from one place, and I stayed with her for a while. But then, she left me in a strange place, and I didn't know where I was. Emily's heart raced. Sarah, she repeated, trying to process. Sarah? Who was this woman? Did he know her? With each word Liam said, the mystery only deepened. Emily knew it wasn't a coincidence. Everything seemed to fit together now. Liam, or Noah, had been taken by someone. He hadn't just disappeared. Someone had taken him from her life and changed his identity. But who was this Sarah, and why had she taken him? Emily's mind filled with doubts and anger. How could someone do this to such a young child? The truth was beginning to emerge, and Emily had a feeling the answer might be more painful than she had imagined. With Liam now stabilized, she knew the questions needed to be asked, and the truth had to be uncovered, no matter how difficult it was. But before anything else, she needed to make sure he was safe, that he was back home with her and Jack. The hospital was silent except for the soft sound of the monitors around Liam. Emily felt the weight of each moment, and a mixture of relief and pain washed over her. She had found her son, but the journey was far from over. Sarah's revelation and the story of how Liam had disappeared left her reeling. The life she had rebuilt with Jack and Noah had been shattered by a lie, a tragedy that had cost her precious months with the son she loved so much. As Emily sat by Liam's bedside, watching him sleep soundly, she couldn't help but feel that fate had been cruel. But at the same time, she knew she was faced with a rare opportunity, a chance to rebuild their lives, to give Liam the home and love he deserved. And most importantly, she knew that the bond between them could not be erased, no matter what had happened in the past. It was then that, when Liam woke up again, he looked at Emily with eyes filled with a vulnerability she never imagined she would see in her son. In his soft voice, he said, I want to go home with you. I want to be your son. Emily felt her heart melt at those words. Tears welled in her eyes as she hugged him with all the love she had. You will always be my son, Liam. Always. The love Emily felt for him, which she had held back for so long, spilled out in a tight embrace. The pain, loss, and fear gave way to a new beginning, a new chance to be a family. The road ahead would not be easy. There were many details to work out, many truths to face, but Emily knew that her life with Liam and Jack was just beginning again. In the end, Emily and Jack had decided to do whatever it took to give Liam the security and love he needed. No matter what happened to Sarah or what the future held, what mattered was that they were now whole again. They had found their way back to each other, and the promise of a new life as a family grew stronger with each passing day. That was the true reward for Emily. Not simply the recovery of a lost child, but the restoration of a home, a chance to love and be loved in ways she had never imagined possible. And so life went on, not without its challenges, but with the certainty that in the end, love and family would always prevail.